starting with our lead story regarding Representative Dan Crenshaw. So Dan Crenshaw of Texas has introduced a sweeping asylum bill that cracks down on asylum fraud, and it also helps fix the loopholes in what he calls a fundamentally broken asylum system, and I do agree with him. The Closing Loopholes and Ending Asylum Abuse Act of 2022 marks the latest Republican proposal. Notice that, the latest Republican proposal, because Democrats aren't doing anything. Democrats want open borders. They just want people to flood into America and sometimes commit heinous crimes. Sometimes terrorists are coming through. You have MS-13 gang members coming through, which are committing murders. You have literally just most recently, I believe it was in Ohio, a 10-year-old girl was raped by an illegal immigrant. You have them committing murders. All sorts of things are happening. And we've seen in this fiscal year alone, 1.5 million migrant encounters. That's roughly 6,000 to 8,000 a day, give or take, 200,000 people per month. And I proposed this question endless amount of times here on the Bald Brad Show. At what point is this considered an invasion? I mean, do all of them need weapons? Do all of them need to be carrying drugs or smuggling, sex trafficking? I mean, what is it, according to the Democrat Party, that would be classified either as a crisis or as an invasion? Because we called Russia sending 120,000 troops into Ukraine an invasion. I understand they have weapons, fully get it, but you don't have to just have weapons to classify something as an invasion. So Democrats want to kind of underskirt this and make it not a big issue by just calling it a challenge, and continually so, even though we haven't seen numbers like this basically in all of U.S. history. This is wild what Democrats want. So Republicans are trying to fix it with this bill. Crenshaw's bill focuses on the asylum system itself, which currently allows many migrants to be released into the U.S. under a claim of having suffered or fearing persecution, at which point their cases may not be resolved for years. Just let into the interior of the country to do whatever they please, and their case isn't just going to be heard for 1 or 2 years. Sometimes it takes 3 or 4 years plus to be even heard, and that's if they show up. It's a situation that has created massive backlogs of asylum cases in immigration courts. Crenshaw's bill would remove language in immigration law that allows asylum claims at the southern border to be made between ports of entry, and would also exclude those who have entered the country unlawfully. Huge point there. This is why this bill is so good. I want to rephrase that again. Would also exclude those who have entered the country unlawfully. You want to break the law? You shouldn't gain and capitalize upon that by seeking asylum after you've broken the law and be rewarded for it. Meaning that asylum seekers who did not present themselves at a designated port of entry and instead tried to enter the country illegally would not be able to claim asylum. I love that aspect of the bill. That's going to curb a lot of this and help fix at least some part of the system where you have Joe Biden Democrats not wanting to solve anything. They just want to make it worse. Check this out. It would also clarify the definition of persecution and particular social group for the purposes of claiming asylum due to the fear of persecution as a member of a social group. This legislation would also authorize the establishment of designated asylum offices abroad, including the embassies and consulates in Mexico, where migrants can make asylum claims. And you saw this under Trump saying, hey, if you want to seek asylum, you can do so in your own country. And then after that paperwork's been resolved, then we can go on and move further. And a lot of Democrats lost their minds going, well, if somebody's seeking asylum in their own country and their own country might be terrorized or whatever it may be, you're having them sit in the place where they're trying to flee because of that terror. Now, the problem with that is the vast majority, I mean, you're talking the high 90 percentile of asylum seekers coming through Mexico don't actually meet the qualification of asylum. So that's why you're getting this gridlock in the courts. And that's what Dan Crenshaw is trying to prevent here. Also, he's trying to prevent people coming in illegally as well. The bill states that if migrants are present in a country where one of these offices exists, they must make the claim there instead of the United States. So trying to put something through a bill this time, through Congress rather than through the executive branch, to kind of curb this whole thing and really move it back into Trump's policies, where you had Joe Biden just trying to remove a lot of his policies. America's asylum process is fundamentally broken. Everyone knows it, including the cartels who are coaching illegal immigrants on how to exploit loopholes, contributing to the worst border crisis in decades. That comes from Dan Crenshaw himself. Now, if you do want to check it out, there is the bill that you can read on Scribd from Fox News Digital. That was pretty much the gist of it. But Crenshaw goes on to say that my bill proposes and closes those loopholes and prevents abuse by mandating asylum be made at the port of entry, prohibiting anyone who illegally enters the United States from claiming asylum after the fact, and establishing offices so migrants can claim asylum in a third country before they reach our borders. I love this. And finally, you got a Republican speaking up that wants to try to fix a problem that Democrats created. You see, there's a common theme here with what Republicans have to do. When either a Democrat goes into office or a Democrat leaves office, there's a lot of cleaning up. Clean up on aisle 5, clean up on America's land here, because you have Democrats constantly defecating and destroying it. And I mean that both literally and also metaphorically, because if you go to California, you have freaking homeless people defecating all over the ground and sometimes throwing it at people. But that's where Democrats want to live. This is the stuff they voted in for. But yet when it happens in their area and it actually starts affecting them, then they go to the red states because we don't have that problem there. And they vote in the same things. And then when now that infiltrates their area of which they voted for, then they move on to the next red state. And at that point, you just have a domino effect and our entire country goes to waste. So that's the main news there on immigration. As far as the numbers are still hurting, folks. We're not even going to bother going into that. You know what it is. It's just going downhill, very similar to inflation numbers. Joe Biden's just continually breaking records. I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Bald Brad Show. If you did, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all our future content.